It's a tight helmet. I'm Robert from Roughchild, and this is our latest one. It's a little bit different to usual in that it's the first time we've done a refresh. We actually built this bike about 6 years ago, and you know, the guy that commissioned it has enjoyed it, loves it, didn't want to give it up, but was very aware that the new stuff had come such a long way, and he wanted his one to be like that. So that's what we did. And I'm ashamed to say it actually took maybe a bit longer than a full build, just because it was a bit more complicated. It ruined the efficiency. We took it apart, blew it apart completely to the frame, and then we're just left with a pile of parts that maybe we could reuse. And yeah, this is it. We've kept the same front end from the original build to the second version, and we've got a set of 2017 GSXR forks that we used, and they are 9 years old. I was questioning whether we should replace them with new Olins like we do on all of our builds. And the reality is that a new set of Olins GSXR forks are way too stiff for this bike. So we've kept the whole original setup because they're tied to the triple tree and the brakes and the axle and the wheel. We've already done all that hard work to make it work, and it rides really nicely. The highlight on this bike has got to be tubeless wheels. And it was such a pain in the ass to make it work. We actually took a factory R100 GS hub and then a brand new BMW rim and sort of refurbed that whole wheel setup, and then made custom axle and custom brake rotor carriers. So if you think you've got an R100 GS geometry and you're trying to make that up to what is essentially a GSXR front end, you've got this bit in the middle where your brake rotors aren't going to line up and your axle isn't going to work. So there were the custom bits that we had to overcome. And I remember we did it, we made it, it was all CNC'd, and then it didn't fit, so we had to deck it, and it was all done by eye, and it was manually fitted. And I'm proud that we got it to work, and that stayed. So then the other part that's defined by the front end is how you're going to mount your front fender. What are you going to use for a front fender? And in this instance, we've got hand-built aluminum fender that was done on an English wheel. It's got riv nuts in it. That's bolted to these handmade fender brackets, and it's so dainty and lovely that all we did on this occasion was pull it apart, powder coat them, put them back on. I think it's lovely. We don't use that setup at all anymore, and the new setup is still beautiful, but this has got a certain charm to it that could potentially be better, but yeah, it's just pretty, isn't it? We did put new tyres on. So we've got Avon Road Rider Mark II tyres. That brings it up to speed. I'm always trying to celebrate the original design and take away the parts that I don't like. And the truth is that I really enjoy the headlight brackets of the original. And I love where the key mounts as the bolt for the headlight bracket. I just love that. So we hand make each of these, and then they're painted, and it looks like an R75/6 headlight bracket. We have, it's the same headlight bucket that was on the original bike, but we have now gutted it, changed all the holes. So that means welding up the old originals, drilling new ones, and then we've got a Motor Gadget M unit inside, which is essentially like solid state fuse board and relays in one. Really great product. We use the Mo Unit Basic because it doesn't have Bluetooth, because I found that the Bluetooth gives you a parasitic draw, and although it does really cool stuff by being paired to your phone, particularly a proximity thing, so as you're walking towards it, it disarms the alarm. It's like keyless go, and it turns on and everything. And if you're running a little lithium battery and you've got that going on, it's a battery killer. So I don't run that. I run the basic one. Moving further back, or up, I suppose, we've got the gauge cluster. I designed this. We must have run it on 10 bikes by now, 20 maybe. It's an electronic tack and a GPS speedo that are designed to mimic the factory BMW gauges, but also heavily inspired by a Porsche 356. And I'm all for technology and minimizing things. There's a lot to be said for a sweeping needle, especially when you're riding a motorcycle and you're just looking everywhere all the time and you're under a constant threat. Just to know these needles are down here and you kind of got a rough idea what's going on. Moving back, we've got the handlebars. There's only so many times I can explain them, but we'll try again. So you can imagine we've got a throttle cable that runs through the bar on this side. And then on this side, we've got these 4 micro switches, micro momentary switches. The wiring for them runs through the bar, down the hole in the triple, into the headlight bucket, and then they're controlling the motor gadget M unit, which is then controlling the wiring harness throughout the bike. The addition on this one that we don't run on all the bikes are motor gadget mirrors. They're adjustable. There's really only one position you can run them on this bike, but you can move them out of the way if you're moving the bike around. And that's nice. And you can flip them up and run them up the top and look like Mickey Mouse ears. I like them underslung. When it originated, we did this matte black, gloss black paint scheme that it was the second time we'd done it, and it was on the second bobber, and all the bobbers were getting this matte black, gloss black thing. And what started off as an original idea got played out really quickly because we must have done it 10 times. Everyone saw it and wanted it. So with this one, we replaced the tank. This is actually a new tank, stripped, relined, and we finished it in Porsche Dark Olive. It's a non-metallic, solid pigment color from the modern palette. And at first, I was not thrilled with it. When I saw it from the painter, I was like, ooh, like, it's a bit limey, I'm not sure. And then that was before it got pinstriped. And I found that the black pinstripe drags it down into that dark black color palette. And we're seeing it in its worst right now. In bright sunlight, this is its greenest. But in low light, in the shadows, it gets very gray and it's more aggressive and like a dark, dark green, like a Ford Highland green on McQueen's Bullet Mustang. Custom roundels as usual. Didn't do any engine work on this guy. What did I do? I pulled the timing cover, which is this guy with the stripes. I did that because 6 years ago, I wasn't getting the timing cover Cerakoted and machine polished. There's a reason that the stripes are shiny like a mirror, because that's one man's job to machine polish them. Pull the timing cover, change the seal, new timing cover, new ignition system. This is still a single spark engine. What does that mean? It means that we've only got one spark plug on top of the cylinder head. On our new builds, there's a second one and the spark plug comes out of the timing cover. What does that mean for the rest of the build? Because we're running a stock engine rebuild, so we've got a, what year is this engine? So the frame is a 1985 and it's got an 88 R100 engine in it. And we've rebuilt it with new flat top pistons. So it's a US spec engine with 1000cc cylinders and single spark. So you've just got a fresh, restored R100 engine. Which leads me to the carburetors. We've upgraded those. Previously, we were running Mikuni VM34 carbs that we spent, my God, I spent 3 days with Mickey Cohen on the dyno, trying every possible jet and needle and emulsifier tube combination, and we found a fabulous recipe for the Mikunis. The downside to a slide carburetor is that you're still reliant on human input. So you are very much like piloting the machine. And if that's something you enjoy and you're good at, that's a very enjoyable experience. If you just want to ride motorcycle and, you know, grip and rip and kind of pretend it's fuel injected, the smart carbs are fabulous at that because it fills in the gaps. If you grab a slide carb and yank on it, you can choke it and the bike just is like, bleh, and then it will pick up and then off you go. With the smart carbs, you can grip it anywhere in the range and it has power, it fills in the gaps, And that's what we've done. So these are Smart Carb SC3s. And we have run a full factory airbox, which I never used to run them back in the day because I thought they were quite ugly. And I don't know if it's because I got old or because we've restored the airbox, but I think there's a certain beauty to running the factory airbox. We've painted it so it looks shinier and nicer than usual. I've also done another mod to it. So I learned this by asking questions. I learned this from buying lots of motorcycles and then asking questions. But basically I discovered that on the plastic snorkels that are on the top of the airbox, I would always find holes drilled on the bottom side. So then I quizzed my engine builder. I don't understand, what's the benefit of drilling these holes? And basically, the snorkels were designed to protect you from the weather. The idea being that if you're giving more airflow at the beginning of the snorkel, that's closer to the airbox and it feels, you get more air in the mid-range. So I did it. And genuinely, I didn't try running the bike without drilling the holes in the snorkels, but I have now drilled holes in snorkels and the bike runs lovely. If you watch my previous video, you'll see that we designed a whole new piece for the top and have been running like a cold air intake, a K&N style air filter on the top. And that's just, if you're building a high performance engine, you just need gobs and gobs of air for the carburetors. Above the airbox, that's where we hide the battery. And long story short, there are two types of lithium battery. And as much as I am a dork, I don't remember what they're called, but there's two types of lithium. Sure, I was using one type of lithium, and then they changed. And when they changed, there became an issue. And it would transpire that anti-gravity have been using the same style, and it's worked the whole time, and I love this battery. And I've had great product support from anti-gravity, and we've now become friends. We love anti-gravity batteries. Tethered to the lithium battery is the cable for your trickle charger. And it sounds really silly, but I bought the best one of those. I bought all of them. And I found the difference between the $5 one and the $25 one. Optimate makes such a fabulous trickle charger. That's the one you want. And I've ordered more. I haven't got one yet, but they've just come out with this new one where it gives you a constant indicator of voltage. It's got a light meter on it, and I believe it's green, amber, red, and does what it says on the tin. So you can just glance at it and see if you need the trickle. This doesn't have that because I don't have one of them yet, but that's an Optimate trickle charger. When we pulled this apart, we modified the frame and then painted it. In period, 6 years ago, we were powder coating the frame. And then I was judging a motorcycle show called the Golden Bolt. And this geezer called Kevin said to me, powder coat is for park benches. And I never got it out of my head. A powder coated frame, when you see it, just looks rubbish compared to paint. Next step, what else have we changed? Seems minor. Changed the spring on the Olin shock absorber. So a few years ago, I remember riding a customer bike, fresh out the box, went for a ride, and it was just too stiff. Like, again, me getting old is the secret to the bikes getting better. So I'm riding along, I'm like, man, this is not good for my back, it's too stiff. So I set up the customer for a fitting with Suspension Matters in Azusa. My guy JJ there does a fitting, changes the spring rate to your body weight so it's got the right amount of sag. It's just a fitting for your motorcycle, priceless. So because we're changing the spring, it's all come apart, so we've powder coated it black because really the yellow spring, it doesn't work with everything. And we all love Olin's, but the branding and the yellow, it's yellow, gold everywhere. It's garish. Black spring. Another change from the original, we've gone with a black leather seat. Before it was a green seat on a black bike, now we've got a green bike with a black seat. And you'll see that it's on these little brass standoffs. Hand formed. It basically, what does it do? It tips the seat this way, so that it doesn't feel like you're falling out of the seat. Whilst you're up there, you can see that's where we hide the rear turn signals on the bike. Tail light in the end of the frame, that's always been the same. Coming to that rear wheel, again, we didn't change the rear wheel, that was on the bike. We've put a new Avon Road Rider Mark II on it. We did replace the hardware, so 12-point ARP hardware throughout. All the correct sizes, thread pitch, all the same as factory. And then the hardware that doesn't exist in ARP, we get it made. Anything that's original got high machine polished. So the shifter, machine polished, even the foot peg gets dismantled, machine polished, new rubber, powder coated, new linkage in stainless. The shift linkage is machine polished and there's 12-point ARP holding that on. Side stand machine polished. Change the exhaust nuts. Oh, and the oil pan. I always forget the oil pan. Massive 4-litre oil sump on the bottom. That's really become like a defining feature of our bikes, and I couldn't help but notice that they've become a little bit more popular in the aftermarket because I keep buying them all. Seems other people are enjoying them too, which we like. And more oil is better than an oil cooler. You're running 4 litres of oil in this 1000cc engine, and if you go too far in the rabbit hole, you'll see that an oil cooler from the factory, it reduced temperatures by about 10%. It's just not enough for the added failure points, and the simplicity of the 4-litre sump just makes it a no-brainer in my opinion. The final point to touch on is the exhaust system. On the original, I wrapped the header pipes in that grey fiberglass header wrap. And yeah, well, we all know what that does, don't we? So I took the exhaust system off the bike, unwrapped it. It actually wasn't too rusty because they were stainless headers, but it was a bit gross. Grown out of that look. Cerakote pipes, they're the factory pipes. So all we do is cut off the last bit of muffler and gut the baffles. The irony is that on the first attempt of this build, I got bored of trying to do that and was actually making my own tailpipes. We've actually gone back to finding good originals, gutting them, cutting them. Exhaust nuts come from Motone in England. Also changed the valve covers. I'm pretty sure on the previous version, we were running the factory flat style valve cover. Now we've got the retro peanut valve covers. And then in addition to that, we would have changed the starter cover as well, because this bike was running a Airbox Delete with velocity stacks. So we've put a factory starter cover back on. Man, the things that you learn with age, right? It just got better, and you found like, it's all fun and games building a custom bike, but then when you actually get into the process of evolving your bike, doing the R&D with every bike, and you find out what works, what doesn't work, you still want it to look good. And the end product on this bike is really, if I was as good as I am today, 6 years ago, this is how it would have been. And I think that concludes it. That is our update.